Welcome to the Darkercide Podcast. This is a podcast where we delve into the darker side of our existence. The morbid, the macabre, the spooky, and the absurd are all fair game as we discuss murder, UFOs, cryptids, creepypasta, the paranormal, and the dark depravity of the human soul. I am your host, David POTTLE, and as always, my co-host, Forrest Smith. How are you today?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
I'm alive.
Also, we have Rachel again.
Hey, Rachel.
I'm starting to become a regular.
You are.
I am so happy.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty much.
Our other co-host, Rachel.
We love
thanks,
you.
Guys.
John is also going to be one of our co-hosts. He's a co-host full-time on this show now.
Welcome, John.
I got hired. What up, y'all?
Congratulations! You have failed!
Hey, everybody.
It's just so much fun.
Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you.
Time, man. All right, guys, before we get started here today, I would like to take a moment to express our sadness at the loss of the great broadcaster, Art Bell, who passed away on what would be considered the most appropriate day for his passing, this past Friday, the 13th. He was the creator and original host of Coast to Coast AM, a paranormal radio show that helped to further the nation's knowledge of the creepy, paranormal, and UFO experiences. Without him, shows like the Darkercide Podcast wouldn't exist. This show is dedicated to his legacy.
Rest in peace.
R.I.P. Art Bell.
R.I.P.
All right, guys, I'm going to jump right into our first news story, and by coincidence, this happens to be from coasttocoast.com.
Nice.
The story today is a story out of Ohio. Numerous residents of a city in Ohio have reported encountering nightmarish raccoons that display unsettling zombie-like behaviors. Authorities at the Youngstown Police Department say that they have received over a dozen calls in the last few weeks from frightened citizens describing the creatures acting particularly strange. Specifically, they say the raccoons stand on their hind legs, bare their teeth, and then topple over to the ground where they lay motionless for a while before repeating the puzzling maneuver. So basically they're and then we'll slowly get back up like a zombie and then go and then kind of like a zombie would if you were to just push it over, I guess.
Oh, fuck.
One wildlife photographer who witnessed the weird antics of the animals said that they have never seen a raccoon behave in such an extremely strange way. Making matters all the more odd is that these incidents have occurred during the daytime, which is atypical for the nocturnal creatures, and the loud noises which would normally scare these animals away seemingly have no effect on them. Is that kind of a rabid type of thing, maybe?
I was thinking, it's monkeys infected with rage, and 28 days later is going to happen.
28 days later. Don't even get me started.
I love that movie. It says, one might suspect the raccoons are simply rabid. Wildlife experts say that this is probably not the case, and that based on witness descriptions, the creatures are likely suffering from a disease known as distemper.
That's
the
it?
old cure-all distemper,
Yeah, that's what happens when you don't chalk your wagon to ford the river, and then, Timmy falls in and gets distemper.
He gets the vapors and distemper. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't even.
And although humans cannot contact the illness, they warn that dogs can, and so pet owners should be mindful of that until odd outbreaks can be contained.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
Ohio.
I drove through there.
Low in the middle, high in the,
It's round on both sides and high in the middle.
Exactly.
Lots of cornfields.
All right.
And meth. It's a meth state.
It's unfortunate that, it definitely is. Forrest, do you have a news story for us today?
Morgue employee pretends to be dead for April Fools, gets cremated. Everyone wants to prank their friends, family, and even customers, but this man... Well, let me start out with the source. This is from 8shit.net.
8shit.net? I wonder how reliable
Like
it is.
ATE, like nom 8 shit?
Number 8, yeah.
Oh, number 8, okay.
.net, and then, of course, the rest of the URL with the page I'm on.
Hashtag fake news.
Maybe. Everyone wants to prank their friends, family, and even customers, but this man got it very wrong. 27-year-old Thomas McClure is now an ex-employee of a morgue in Boston after he tried to prank his coworkers by pretending he was dead. This is Boston. Boston, everybody.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, but I mean, that's stupid. Whatever. I mean, why would you put yourself in a situation where you could possibly end your own life? But again, that's like one of those, what do they call it, the Darwin Award?
The Darwin Award.
The Darwin Award. Dad. Anything else, or is it just a headline type of story? Either way, it's stupid and silly and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dark. It's dark because he was an idiot. Pretty much.
Dark stuff. I mean, you can make this into a movie. I mean, it's crazy
but
shit.
That's stupid.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, but then the movie would be over in 5 seconds.
Hey, before.
Gotcha. Now I'm dead. Oh, no.
I'm sure, like, Jason Blum will probably figure out a way to do a story on this. Maybe. Who knows?
All right, John, did you have a new story today?
I do, actually. So, I got this from NBC. Their title is Dead Man Balking, which I thought was hilarious. There's a Romanian man who, in court in Romania, they refuse to acknowledge that the man is actually, in fact, alive. So, it breaks down like this. Constantine Rulo, or Rulu, I don't know, correct me, I don't know how to, he's Romanian. He learned that he was dead. So, basically what had happened is he was estranged from his wife living in Turkey. He'd been there for about 20 years, and then she decided to report that he was dead in about 2015. Since he wasn't there to argue, they determined legally that he was dead.
Well, the statute of limitation, I don't know, it's like 7 years or something.
Whether or not you're dead or alive? Whether somebody
Yeah, it's a small number, at least in the United States.
So somebody goes to declare you dead?
It's 7 years, that's all it is. If you go missing for 7 years, I can legally have you determined to be
So I
deceased.
can disappear for 7 years, and then I can start all over.
So he got thrown out of Turkey and sent back to Romania.
Oh, Jesus.
But they won't acknowledge that he's alive. Turkey won't let him back in. So he's a man without a country. He's a man without he's
identity.
Not even a man. He's like a living ghost. But yeah, they wouldn't let him file his request because he filed it too late. So
What?
Constantine Rulo, you're alive somewhere, but we're not entirely sure. And he's kind of a sad looking dude.
Oh, poor guy.
That's a little picture.
He's like, he's got nowhere to go. How would you look?
Yeah, so there's Constantine, the poor bastard. Anyway, I saw that. I thought it was the darker.
like that movie, The
That's the
Airport.
darker side of wife, right?
Yeah.
Right, pun. I'll be here all week.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, thanks, John. All right, well, that will do it for our news stories today, guys. That was pretty quick. We breezed right through those things.
Yeah, we did.
I've got a creepypasta here, and it's called The Window by a person who calls themselves Ready Lover 1 420. Right?
If that is your
Sounds
real name.
It's a great name, right?
Wow.
During the summers of my teenage years, I used to work landscaping with my father. It kept me out of trouble, and it gave me a little spending money. Yeah, working with your dad can suck big time. But I used to goof off a lot, and with my dad as the boss, I knew I couldn't get fired. We used to work on this yard of a woman who owned a well-respected and popular Italian restaurant in the town. Dad would say, "We're going to work Angela's today," and I never minded because my dad used to leave me to work the yard alone, and we would go off to work, and he would go off to work other yards. The house sat on the street and had a small patch of grass in the front yard, and the majority of the yard was in the back. The yard was big with a slight hill going away from the house. It was an easy job, but the size of the yard made the morning fly by. The house was a turn-of-the-century Gothic-style home and had a large viewing window looking into the backyard, and often I would see Angela sitting at the window drinking tea and watching me work the yard. Angela was an older, short Italian woman with a warm smile, and she would wave to me when she noticed me looking at the window, and I would always wave back. Fast forward a couple years, and it was the summer before I went off to college, and my dad drops me off at Angela's house to take care of the yard, and as always he left me there alone to take care of the yard, and he would go work elsewhere. I was nearing midday, and I was finishing up the detailing of the yard, and I took a break to get some water. Along the side of the property was a large blackberry bush. I would often fill my belly with those berries when they were in season, so I was enjoying some berries and hydrating myself when I looked up at the window checking to see if Angela was sitting there, having her tea. It had been a while since I had seen her smile and wave, and as luck would have it, she was sitting there smiling down at me and waving. I smiled and waved back, and as usual, then went back to finishing the job. Later I looked back at the window, and Angela had apparently moved on to another part of the house. A while later, I was packing up the equipment. My dad pulled up, and we loaded the equipment, and we got into his truck and pulled away from the house. A short while down the road, my father and I got to talking, and he asked me, "Hey, did I tell you?" "Tell me what?" I asked. "Did I tell you about Angela?" "What about Angela?" I replied. "You sure I didn't tell you?" he said. "No, what about her?" I said. "Oh, He went on. About 2 weeks ago, she suffered a massive stroke and she passed away. Her son still wants us to keep up the yard work for the estate he finished. A chill ran up my spine. My body went cold, and I was at a loss for words. Finally, I said, "Oh, I see." We drove home that day, and all I about was what I had witnessed that afternoon. I didn't talk much after that conversation. I never told my dad about seeing her that day. Until this day, I am still haunted by her smiling and waving me from the great beyond.
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
What?
He didn't know it, neither did I. But my father and I were closer at that moment than we'd ever been in our entire life.
Oh, good lord.
Wow.
Man, I love creepypasta.
That feels like the most real one that you've read, I think. Like, that feels like it could happen.
Yeah, it does.
All right, guys, let's move on to our movie review today.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
This movie is based off of a Stephen King joint by the name of Gerald's Game. It is the Netflix original, Gerald's Game, brought to you in 2017 by director Mike Flanagan. Again, a story by Stephen King, adapted Gerald's Game. This movie got a 6.7 out of 10 on the IMDB's. It is a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, making it, what, Rachel?
Certified fresh.
It's certified fresh.
I love saying that.
A 3 out of 4 by Roger Ebert. And 81% of Google users like this movie. The tagline goes, a woman accidentally kills her husband during a kinky game.
Accidentally kills her husband?
Yeah, that's wicked wrong.
Yeah,
already.
she doesn't accidentally kill
what?
her husband.
No. Handcuffed to her bed with no hope of rescue, she begins hearing voices and seeing strange visions. That's a weak-ass description.
I've never heard of that.
That's because that's not how it goes down.
No, because accidentally is a load of hogwash, in my opinion.
Well, considering she was handcuffed to the bed, how did she
Yeah,
accidentally kill
considering
him?
the fucker... Alright, so, movie starts off. Husband and wife are trying to fix their relationship. They go off down to their, what is it, beach house, would you call it? Is that what you say it was, John?
Lake house.
A lake house?
Like, yeah.
Oh, it is a lake house, or it's
Yeah.
a lake house. Yeah, because that tree wouldn't have been growing in the yard if it was, but whatever. Lake house. And they get right away to this moment where he's trying to get her in handcuffs to spice up their lives, their relationship, and then she's attached to the bed and she can't get away. He, prior to that, had popped a fucking boner pill.
Yeah, couple of them.
One prior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they started to like get crazy again, he popped another boner pill.
Mm-hmm.
He's a man in his mid, 50s, early 60s, you think?
Oh yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so he's probably already got heart issues anyway, and now he's popping boner pills. It's just going to make your blood pressure skyrocket and your blood go to your dick, so... He passes away from that, not from accidentally her killing him.
You could argue
agree.
that she kicked him off the bed and there was blood. It's like you could argue that he had a heart attack and then, I mean, like 6 of one, half a dozen the other. Was it that he hit his head and bled out, or was it?
No, I think he was dead before he hit the ground, because when she was, maneuvering her legs to lift him off of her, because he had clapped right on top of her. That's a way to go. But when she had pushed him off, like she was trying to hold up his face, and you could see his eyes were open. And then he fell to the ground. And that's probably was if there wasn't that much blood. Because head wounds bleed.
That's true.
Yeah.
That pool of blood wasn't as large as it realistically could have been.
Yeah.
And this is the mother of a young boy talking, so I feel like...
So
prior
to them actually getting to the house, she encounters this dog. And she, at one point, before the sexual act, feeds the dog. So now this dog knows that it can get food from the house. Before they go up to the room and they get into these sexual positions and this weird fucking murder chokeout fetish that the husband has, they leave the fucking front door open.
Well, and it's like she looks back and like reaches her arm out ever so slowly, as if she knows she has to do it, but just keeps on going.
From a film perspective, I think you just gave too much away there with that motion of her.
Oh my God, of course.
It's like, oh, no, we know something stupid's going to happen when they should have just left it open for us to figure out on our own. I feel like if you push it too hard, then you're and then you go back and go, oh, the door was open. I get it now.
That's
instead of
amazing.
it's going, hey, everybody, look at the door. It's open. It's gonna come to the factor in a few minutes. And so the dog comes in after the husband falls and dies, and he basically starts eating her. And at that point, she's had enough. She's gone crazy, and she starts to see who?
Her husband.
Right.
Her dead husband. But he's, still walking around in his boxer briefs.
Well, she sees something else.
Blaming her for everything still.
I mean, I agree. That's an amazing point, though. But there have been movies that have done things like that, where they want the audience to just figure it out while it's going. And the movies have been negatively criticized for that.
Yeah, well, this one's like positively criticized, but we'll get some negative criticism later. I'm sure.
Ironic, right?
So basically it just continues on. She ends up going into this experience of her being molested by her father when she was 12 or 10 in the books, 12 in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she gets into, she's molested by her father, and a solar eclipse happens, and then she just confronts all these demons in her own brain. At one point, her own self is now talking to her, so her husband and herself are now split personalities. She eventually sees this weird Moonlight Man.
Yeah, it's called the Moonlight Man.
Yeah, the Moonlight Man.
And creepy.
You have no idea what's real, what's her psyche, her craziness, her, what would you call that?
Or she lost her mind.
A mental
Wouldn't you?
breakdown, or
You're handcuffed to a bed. Your husband's dead on the floor.
she
You're
went through
watching
a
a
lot.
dog eat him.
She went through a lot of trauma.
A lot of trauma.
But
Of
she's
course she
also got
snapped.
this emotional baggage from her childhood as well, and that's now being brought out because she's at this point facing death, and what she thinks her brain is telling, hey, she's gone into this crazy dementia. I don't even know what to call it. Just a mental breakdown.
Yeah, psychotic breakdown.
Exactly. And
Exactly.
she's being forced to face this issue along with all of her baggage from her past.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys felt this, but the last half of the movie, I felt like I started to question, like, okay, well, what if she actually did things that we never got to see, because it's all just a mind fuck. Like,
We'll eventually figure out what's happening. We know that it doesn't, but in that you're like, well, yeah, I don't. You can see where she could have done stuff, whatever. But I don't know. This movie was a weird one for me. In the payoff, she ends up getting out, but the way she gets out is just crazily brutal. Like,
it's insane.
yeah, I mean, it's insane the way she gets out, because she literally gloves her hand, basically. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's you pull it off, and she lubed it up with her own blood, and then was able to get it out, but ripped part of it completely off the bone and stuff, and
It was brutal to watch. It really was.
yeah, and then in the end, because she had to face all of this stuff, she basically becomes this better person, and it helps these people now who have dealt with childhood molestation and other issues. That's how the movie pays off in the end. What did you think of it? Can you point out any things, Rachel, that...
So, and anybody who's watched any Stephen King movie or read it, books, either or, there are quite a few correlations between one of his other famous ones, which is Dolores Claiborne, which I found interesting. Is very similar to Dolores Claiborne, but I also enjoyed the husband references the dog
Cujo.
as Cujo,
Yeah.
which is
And he says something
fantastic.
along the line of, we all die, everybody bows to the beam.
Bows to the beam.
Which was a reference to the Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
I missed both of those. They
Yeah.
called the
'Cause
dog
he-
Cujo.
Yeah, no.
I
You
also
should have
didn't watch
finished.
the fucking movie.
Oh, yeah,
I
you
hated
finished,
it.
you
But
finished the movie. Yeah.
30 minutes I want back. But
Please don't add that out.
Yeah,
I mean, you can if you want.
There is a direct correlation between Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne. Stephen King wrote those two books roughly at the same time, and they both came out roughly at the same time. Dolores Claiborne kills her husband during the eclipse, the solar eclipse. She is molested by her father during that same solar eclipse. Across the lake from each other, these two incidents are happening. And in the books, during these two incidences, both of the ladies, Dolores and Jessie, is that her name?
Yes.
Jessie,
What?
were seeing each other's experiences through their own eyes.
Well,
in the books, they interchanged.
And well,
in these
they
movies,
do reference that in the movie because she talks about a woman standing above a well, which is like
which was Dolores. Because her
yeah,
husband
when
fell
she
down a
tricked her
well
husband to
die,
fall down. She set him up to fall in, which I was like, yeah, kick ass, lady. To fall in, and then Jessie, the woman in Gerald's game, describes looking up, like as if she was in the well, looking up at Dolores Claiborne.
Yeah, I think that was more of a nod as I was reading stuff on that from the director and the writer who did it. He's, is a fanboy, and Dolores Claiborne didn't do anything with Gerald's game, but Gerald's game, the movie, did a nod to them. So that I found fun. I actually did like the way it transitioned, the way it eventually became a story of triumph, etc. I will give it good marks. Briefly, how did you feel about the movie, Forrest?
I loved it. I love outstretched, needed endings like that movie has, because literally, an hour into the movie, I thought it was going to end. I'm like, okay, this must be the ending, and then you have that extra 40 minutes, and you're just like, okay, we're just going to get extremely realistic, I guess. Yeah. And trying to think of anything special to point out. Well, I would like to point out, I want to be honest, I love Stephen King. I've only read selective books from him, so I had really not much knowledge how much this line crosses with other stories, parallel stories, parallel events happening. So I am not aware of that, but I loved everything about this movie, the creepy factor, everything. Even the last 20 minutes, you still felt creeped the F out.
Yeah. Absolutely. John, what do you got to say about this? I know you've got a harsh critique because you didn't finish the movie.
Oh, God, yes. And I'm so sorry. I told you guys I'd watch any movie.
Yeah.
Not
At least you're
one.
honest.
Not this one. And I got to say, it's watching somebody descend into madness and seeing a play happening in front of them is different than reading something like that. Because you can get into somebody's head differently. Right. And I'm super psyched they didn't. And to be fair, to give the movie a little more credit than I did earlier today, to give them a little bit of credit, they didn't do that stupid thing where you pan the camera at the person and they're talking to themselves inside of their head. It's the muffled sound of them having that conversation, which is super played out and was in every movie from the 1970s. And that's cool that they didn't do that. But at the same time, I feel like if you're a fan of the books, it might be hard to see the sort of thing played out on television in front of you. And it's a miserable story anyway.
Maybe it should have been a longer movie.
Oh, God.
It's an hour and 40 minutes.
No, I think timing-wise, I think it was just right. Beginning, middle, end.
Yeah, I think if they're longer, and I would have probably been.
Yeah, I would have gotten bored. If it was any shorter, I probably would have been pissed off. So I mean, I think it was a good amount.
And I think John does have a good point where it is definitely harder for some people who have read his books to even want to see a movie based on it, and or to differentiate the two. I'm somebody who can differentiate the two. And it's okay, a movie's a movie. A movie will never be a book,
Yep.
It's just like you were talking about the...
Gotta accept it, not a comic book either.
Yeah, exactly. But you kind of have to, because the book is so much more personal. It's Stephen King. He's giving you the story, and then you can interpret it the way you want. Sometimes people like John, and sometimes even some of them myself, I can't. There are some movies that I just can't watch book-wise to movies. So
I read online that he helped a lot with the screen playing of the shots of everything, the playback.
I actually
on
heard
set.
that the only thing that he ever did was watch the rough cut and said that he liked it.
Really?
Yeah, and that was from the director's mouth. So
he doesn't really get involved with his movies.
No,
really doesn't.
Not this one.
Wow.
He only saw the rough cut and thought it was better than some of the other movies that he that were made.
Wow.
Like the Gunslinger?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't even want to talk about that, John.
Woof.
I'm going to give it a probably an 8.5 out of 100 million bingo boppers.
I'd say 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're with that.
Yeah, I don't like movies with incest like that. It's just, ugh.
Ugh.
It hurts.
It's bad. I know. I'd give it a 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10? Not bad. John?
Oh, man, I shut it off.
0?
Sure.
0 out of
It's
0.
not the worst thing I've ever seen, but probably, 0 to 0.5.
0.5?
0.5.
That's
Nice.
not bad, John. 4 words for me is fuck her dad seriously. I mean, that's probably could be taken wrong.
Do we have to?
No.
Like, I don't...
4 words. Go around. Like, anybody got 4 words for this movie?
I don't even know. It was like, meh. I liked it. Some parts I liked, some parts I didn't.
So meh.
Meh.
Forrest.
Please include this. I would say her dad deserves punishment. I was thinking death at first, but no.
That's a good 4 words, John.
Don't waste your time.
Don't waste your time. Fucking amazing, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I still can't. I 4 words. Yeah, meh. Good job.
Good choice.
I just can't do it. I can't figure any words out right now. All right, guys. Well, that was the
I love you all.
Meh. Can we just have that be the official one? Meh.
Intro song.
Yeah. So that was the Darkercide movie review. Sorry, we didn't really brutally. You can see it. Watch it.
Please watch it.
Give your own review. Do whatever you want.
Let us know what you think.
We want to know.
Let us know what you think. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that was the Darkercide movie review. We're going to be moving on to the segment we like to call Diving Deeper into the Darker Side. Today we have Rachel presenting. What are we talking about today, Rachel?
So today we're going to be talking about an incident that took place in the UK known as the Rendlesham Forest incident.
Oh my God.
A lot of people like to equate it to the UK's Roswell. So we had Roswell here, New Mexico. Everybody knows that in the 1940s. But this took place in 1980, right after Christmas, literally.
Wow.
So it took place in Suffolk, England. The forest is a 5.8 square mile pine forest east of Ipswich. Nearby the forest lies 2 NATO bases named RAF Woodbridge and RAF Bentwaters. At the time were being leased to the United States Air Force. On the night of December 26, 1980, around 3 a.m., reports of strange light in the sky were received at both Air Force bases, local police stations, and nearby control towers. So a lot of people saw what was happening.
So is this a British Air Force base and a separate American Air Force base?
No, they're both British Air Force. They're both NATO bases.
Okay,
so they're...
yeah.
What do you mean by control towers? Like people are up there...
radar.
Radar.
And like, what do they call it?
The air
traffic control.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
receptors
Thank
and stuff
you.
like that?
What's that?
Like receptors too and stuff like that?
I don't know
Or
what
no?
you mean.
Yeah.
Like cell phone towers?
No, just
No, this was in 1980. There were no cell phone
right.
towers.
Jesus.
It's just
Oh my
it's
God.
dudes in a radar tower just watching the planes come in and
Yeah.
go so they don't crash into each other.
Yeah,
Right.
air traffic control.
Okay.
So, from the east gate at Woodbridge, a few patrolmen. So, let me start off by saying this is a huge incident that took place over a couple of days. My goal is to talk about this over the next few episodes because there's just so much involved and it's so intricate that I want to make sure that I do it justice. So stay tuned because there's going to be more to come.
So this is a part 1.
This is part 1.
Hell yeah.
Part 1.
Part
We're going to
1.
do
I love
part 2
parts.
next episode.
Yep.
Good.
So, what I'm going to tell you about is the story from just one witness's perspective and what he experienced and so forth. So,
That's insane.
from the east gate at Woodbridge, a few patrolmen went to investigate. It was about a mile from the base. They're just thinking it was a downed aircraft. Jim Peniston, a security officer, and John Burrows approached what appeared to be a triangular metallic shape, measuring 3 meters across and 2 meters in height. The object appeared to be glowing a bright white light that lit up the forest and also appeared to have a reddish light on the top of the craft with blue lights under it. The craft also appeared to be hovering. It is said that the animals in the surrounding area of the forest were described as being in a frenzy.
What?
So nature was responding to whatever was happening. They approached the craft and the bright white light dimmed or dissipate, giving a more detailed look. Peniston describes the size as a 9 by 9 by 9 foot triangle that was about 7 feet tall. As they got closer to the craft, they experienced what felt like a static electricity on their skin, a feeling of slow moving, like walking through water or sand, and the surrounding natures faded, and it felt as though time had slowed down. Peniston then took out his notebook and began drawing sketches of the craft, how the lights were situated, and so on. And I'll make sure to send some photos to Forrest so he can post them on the website.
Are there photos of this actual craft?
Yep, well, of his actual drawing, of
Please.
his first-hand experience that he drew right then and there. He said that while he was writing notes and drawing the picture of the craft, his handwriting had changed. Like something was trying not to
let him not.
To let him not finish.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's quite strange.
Kind of a paranormal type of thing going on.
Yeah. So as they were looking at the craft, Peniston noticed that, while it was smooth and metallic in surface, there were glyphs along the side. So when he reached out to touch those glyphs, it felt more like sandpaper, just in the etching where those were.
Interesting.
So he touches these glyphs. Peniston touched the craft over the glyphs and described them as being etched into the side like a sorry. Stepped away from the craft, and both men said that they became engulfed in the bright white light, hovered up to the tree line, and it took off instantly. So quickly, it was like it disappeared. So it went up, it hovered, and then it just shot, gone in an instant. So these men returned to the base and were told by their commanding officers during their debriefing that, this is a quote, Project Blue Book ended in 1969 and the matter should not be discussed any further. For those of you who don't know what Project Blue Book is, it was a organization within the United States Air Force that was in charge of researching UFO activity.
Which had been rampant between the 40s.
Started in 1947 and it ended in 1969. Yeah. And any UFO activity is not to be investigated.
Didn't they release the Project Blue Book information within the last decade or so?
With the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah, so...
Not all of it, but some.
But, I mean, most of it is... There's a good portion, maybe 70-80% of it has actually been redacted and blacked out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Freedom of information, my ass.
Right.
Freedom of some information.
I thought that was
freedom of the
reversed.
information we want you to have. But that was a big thing when they did release that information. But yeah, Project Blue Book did end in the 60s, and again, they weren't necessarily investigating these types of incidences in the 70s, 80s, and even as of recently.
Right. So these guys got scared during the debriefing because it's their careers that are on the line,
right.
And a lot of information was withheld during that time for that fear, which is why some people say it's inconsistencies in these guys' stories, but it's more so the fact that they're retired, they don't have to worry about losing their jobs, that all this other information is now coming about, even though it's been 30-something years.
Didn't we discuss something similar to this in a previous episode, I think, with John, where people, they usually don't want to tell these types of stories, especially back then, back in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
I mean, any type of craziness, people just thought you was a wacko and didn't want to, hire you. And if you put yourself out there and said, I had this experience, especially they're still in the military.
Yep.
Their higher ups and their supervisors aren't going to promote them anywhere if they're telling crazy stories and causing problems for them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there was a couple of I looked into this briefly, and there was a couple of bobbies that actually came out, like British police officer. This happened over several nights. There was a lot of different activity, and some of these bobbies actually came out to witness one of the events. I believe it was the third night. And what ended up happening to them is they were kind of drummed out of the force. One of them became an alcoholic, and the other one basically died in obscurity. So the fears that Rachel's talking about are absolutely not unfounded. I mean,
especially with this story, yeah.
Well, that, and it's something. Project Blue Book. They were told not to talk about it. It ended in 1969, and that was that.
Wow.
And these people who saw what they saw, touched what they touched, experienced what they experienced, are trying to tell these people this is what happened, and they're like, no, that it never happened. You guys it was just some crazy lights or something that we saw.
Yeah. So these guys get back to the base after the first night incident, and they're one of their commanders, Lieutenant Colonel Holt.
Lieutenant.
Yes. which is famously known for as the Halt Memo, which we'll discuss in further detail over the next couple episodes, because there's just so much to talk about.
Oh, I bet.
There really is.
There's a lot.
Had shown up to the base at about 5 a.m., which is only 2 hours after this incident had happened, and everything was already marked top secret.
Okay.
So their boss can't access the information because he's not cleared for it.
So how can he even
Exactly.
let them know what's going on with it, or
Right.
Right. That's kind of interesting that Project Blue Book ended, but it's been marked top secret.
It's top secret and classified information.
Which makes you can go down a whole conspiracy theory.
And
Which
then it gets crazy.
okay.
So when Peniston touched the side of the craft, he began experiencing what he describes in his mind's eye, just numbers, zeros and ones, zeros and ones, zeros and ones, and all binary code, repeating and repeating. It didn't stop until he wrote them down in the same notebook in which he drew the sketches. So, writes those numbers down. He stops seeing that in his brain. He puts the notebook away for 30-something years. And in 2010, he showed this information to a man named Joe Luciano, Italian guy.
Joey Luciano.
Obviously, decoded the binary code. And this is what it says. Exploration of Humanity, 8100. It gives north and west coordinates, which shows somewhere in Brazil. Then it says continuous for planetary advance. Fourth coordinate continue. And it's jumbled, but then it says the word before. It posts more coordinates that show another place in Belize, Sedona, Arizona, the Great Pyramid in Giza, Egypt, the Nazca lines in Peru, a temple in China, and a temple in Greece. So these are actual places.
These are all hotspots of UFO activity
And they are.
as well, aren't
It's
they?
the Nazca lines. I mean,
all of those, if you were probably to look at the UFO sightings for each one of those areas, you would see that these are hot spots of
this is what
UFO
was in
activity.
this guy's mind.
Well, this is what it was in
Very
the
scary.
code in his mind that he
Yep.
wrote down. That's crazy.
Now,
Zero-
did he speak binary? That's
No. Well, this happened in 1980, so I mean, computers were barely existent. They didn't even, I don't even think they had them in the Air Force at the time. So
Well, they made a rudimentary version.
They would have had punch card machines, yeah.
So at the end of this message, it also says, eyes of your eyes, origin, gives coordinates again for Brazil, origin year 8100.
What year did this happen?
8100. So this took place in, the code was deciphered in 2010.
No, but the initial.
When he started with these numbers was in 1980, right after the incident.
Interesting. I wonder what the 8100 is.
30 years? Took 30 years. Wow.
Because he had put it away forever.
Well, yeah.
He kind of just.
He wrote it down,
To get it out of
it
his
escaped
head.
his mind, and then
So he had this thing just wouldn't stop moving around in his brain and just kept on going and 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 going. And he figured that the only way to get rid of it was by writing it down. And when he wrote all the entire sequence down, it finally stopped in his brain.
Right.
which is weird in
I'm
itself.
I'm sorry. I'm just.
I have a theory. I'm gonna write it down in this piece of paper. I'm
Okay.
sorry about all the noise, guys. 8100,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Right? You see
Yeah.
that? See that? 8100,
8100.
Yeah.
1980. 8 and 1 is 9. Couple of zeros. Boom. There it is.
Oh.
There it is.
Interesting. That could have been
Snap.
their way of.
I don't,
Wow.
and I don't know in binary what the difference
Whoa.
would be, but is there something there?
crazy.
I don't know. I just made this up in my head right now.
Yeah,
Could be.
very well be a connection. And again,
Wow.
the 8100 is definitely pertinent. I mean, what is that number significant? But again, this is very interesting with the coordinates.
Well, that's
human
the creepy part.
exploration, origin, all these other words that are in there, that actually get you into this. They're out there. We're being watched. They're keeping an eye on us. This is important. we wanted you guys to have this information. We are giving you this information.
Eyes of my eyes. I mean, that's
right. It was basically
eyes of your eyes.
Eyes of your eyes. Thank you.
This would be like an emotional drone that they had sent down or something, or connectivity. Like, because if it gave this person this information and it's like eyes of my eyes, I want you to see what I'm seeing, what we're seeing, what we're doing.
Right.
Crazy.
That's interesting. That's
So I didn't really have too much time this week to get super into it, but one of these locations supposedly is a sunken island off the coast of Brazil, which I briefly read said to be the second Atlantis.
How many Atlantises were there?
I don't know.
Well,
we know of the first Atlantis.
Maybe there were multiple
Atlantises.
Or
Atlantises.
Atlanti.
Multiple these islands off of the coast of all these places that were, ancient civilizations,
right.
or, could have been destroyed during the same thing.
Right.
Some sort of ancient nuclear explosion, John.
Possibly.
Or some sort of Botnagite story that, you look back and like these ancient civilizations were destroyed by aliens, and some of these crazy stories, in which we might be hitting upon at some point soon, right, John?
Is it quite the possibility?
Quite the possibility.
Quite the possibility.
Quite the possibility.
That's like one of these coordinates. It's the Great Pyramid in Egypt. I mean, they're hieroglyphs. Everybody has seen ancient aliens.
You said Belize, though, too, right?
Yep, there's a few.
Belize is a massive hotspot area.
The Nazca lines in Peru,
of course.
Those are only visible from space, and they were made before the invention of flight. So
you have the theories that these people invented balloons, hot air balloons, or had their own things.
Well, yeah, but not
or kites or
that.
something. But no, I mean, you've really had to get a good view of these. You have to be up there pretty good.
One of the Nazca lines is in the shape of a plane. So I mean, it was built in the pre-Columbian times, and it's the shape of an airplane. So
yeah,
it's unbelievable. And some of those creatures weren't necessarily natural to the environment in that area too. I mean, there's pictures of monkeys up there, I think, too, right? And other different types of creatures and animals that probably weren't necessarily native at that time, or native at the time in which they were made, which was ancient times.
right.
Which is interesting. Are there any other things that were...
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow.
But like I said, in order to do it justice, I'm going to have to give you the full story. This is just, like I said, a little taste.
So this is just his perspective.
This is just what happened with this one man.
During the day one, he experienced these on day one, right?
Day one.
The initial day.
Yep, the initial...
And that was when they first saw the lights, and then he went off into the Rendlesham Forest.
Rendlesham Forest, yep. December 26th, 1980. So it was literally Christmas Eve, and the joke is, they caught Santa, but...
That's kind of funny. So, and then basically... they came upon this area in the forest, and that's where he saw that round.
Yeah, there was a...
it was a triangular, 9 by 9 by 9.
They walked into a glowing bright light.
Which has got to have some significance. Put those 9s upside down, everybody.
6.
So it's Satan.
6.
Hail Solved it.
Solved it.
So, and on the other thing, too, is Peniston, on his own time, went back out into the forest and took a plaster cast of where the landing gear.
Was this the next day?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
So
was told
later
not to
that
go,
morning.
I think, right?
Yeah, they were told not to investigate it. But I mean, if you saw something that amazing and were told not to discuss it, what would you do?
I would, yeah.
The first thing I did would investigate what I just saw.
Right. I would go collect evidence.
Right.
Which there's so much,
And you're
so
gonna
much to talk about.
Give that to us next time.
I will
or
give it to you
next-
next time. So
right.
tune in.
So what's neat about
Heck yeah.
Peniston is he...
Did you just call him
Peniston.
I did call him Peniston.
How is it spelled?
Penniston. I mean,
Peniston.
What?
it's
It's like William Penn Ishton.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's
it's the
neat
son of William Penn? Who knows?
What's neat about the guy is his notebook is online. Like you can go and you can see the 16 pages of ones and zeros that he sketched out, and they look frantic. I mean, worse than my handwriting. They are just nuts. And
You get chicken scratch.
yeah, oh hell yeah. And then he's also got the drawing of the hieroglyphs. And you can actually see who, like, the decoding that was done by, I forgot his name, the Italian
Joe
guy.
Luciano.
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 That's a good.
I'm assuming that's how you say it because it's an Italian name.
That's a good binary code.
Yeah, it's a spicy binary. Yeah, so that guy. But I mean, you can actually see like the work that was done, the people that were involved. So it's really kind of like open book, which is fun.
I don't know much about binary code, but could that have been decipherable during that time in 1980?
Because binary's been around for a while. We've been using ones and zeros to code stuff for quite a bit of time. It's like 60s, I think we started, right? 50s.
I don't exactly know when we began using binary with computers, but I think they grew up together.
Right. Yeah,
so that's almost a universal language.
Right. And it would be considered a universal language, especially if these aliens were aware that we knew binary.
Well, it's easy to translate.
Well, it's a mathematical quote.
Right.
Absolutely, and mathematics is a universal language, and they often talk about in these movies or in different experiences that if we were to experience firsthand UFO aliens or creatures from a different universe or in UFOs, that the language that we would communicate with each other first would be a mathematical language. We would have to figure out what we were trying to do with numbers, but it would be with numbers, and I think that's the universal truth. That a lot of people would agree upon.
What was on the disc that Carl Sagan
It was a
sent
DNA
out?
code of humans, along with of some of our great music.
Yeah, so Beethoven was on there. The sound of children playing, the sound of just nature. I think it was the sound of his then girlfriend, but then his Carl Sagan's wife's heartbeat. So it was supposed to be the sound of a heart that was in love. And then directions to get here so you can blow us up.
But I think they did it. I think they encoded the human DNA on there too.
No,
we hadn't even gone there.
We hadn't gone there at that time.
Okay.
But yeah, we sent Voyager 1 in one direction, Voyager 2 in the other direction, and presumably they're still pinging directions how to get here and screw us up. Nothing scares me more than the Voyager probes. Nothing on this Earth. Swear to God.
Well, you're sending out a beacon going, here we are!
Yeah, and you're basically
Come
giving
get
them the
us.
sound of a heartbeat, which they probably don't understand, and the sound of children playing, which if you would think about it, they either are people who care about their children or they're not, and most of them probably aren't. Like
Not even that. Like,
because they're probably more of a logical society.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a cultural thing. So to them, that could sound like screaming.
Or these murderous people, or
Right.
like, what are these? Are they all this stupid? Let's destroy them.
A really good movie that kind of delves into lost language is Arrival.
Yes, of
The
course.
Arrival
That's a great movie.
with,
We'll have to review that at
yes.
some point in the future if we don't do the
I've
movie
never
we were
seen
just
it.
talking about.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
a killer flick, yeah.
Yeah.
The cool language, and they have the linguist
Yeah.
going in there.
Yeah.
What was neat is I looked into this thing a little bit this morning, and one of the guys that was a witness one of the nights actually said that when he was being debriefed, the guy's name's Larry Warren. When he was being debriefed, he said that the guy that was debriefing him slipped and said that multiple civilizations have already visited, and that's all that this guy talks about. And now take Larry Warren with a grain of salt. He has been running around the UFO circuit since the 1980s, running around with his mullet in the 90s, talking about this his experience as an airman on this base.
Yeah, but these guys are in a position where they see and experience these things, can't by law talk about what they saw outside of the military in civilian life, and then what do you expect? Some of these people snap, and then they have to let people. They just can't control it, and they break all these laws and rules and everything. And then what the government does for the next few years is go, they're fucking quacks. These guys don't know what they're talking about. This never happened.
Or they show up dead.
Or they end
Yeah.
up dead. Yeah, but. And some of these people like him, like you were saying, he's been through the circuit through the years, and he's been a strong proponent, but nobody's listening to him except for the people who, like us, are listening to him.
Well, it's a fascinating.
And he's probably never held a normal job because he's a quack, and it's a fucking weirdo.
I love UFO shit. I watch Unsealed Alien Files
creepy.
to fall asleep at night.
Creepy stuff.
That's
No.
warped. I watched
I would watch it
This
too.
is the stuff that puts me to sleep. But
also
it's also
because it comforts
it's
you.
comforting, and it's also very informative. And once you think about it, and I've seen
Well, I mean,
all the episodes so many times.
Oh, I bet.
But this is one of my favorites.
Well,
I need to check it out. I really do.
It's interesting because, again, I mean, we've all had our own UFOs. I've experienced
yeah.
UFOs with you. I've experienced UFO phenomena with everybody in this room.
Yep.
We all have.
Absolutely.
We all
And
have
I mean,
together.
we all have a shared a knowledge. We've all experienced this stuff. And to have people tell us that we're fucking crazy otherwise is just, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a
You
weather
gotta feel for
balloon.
these people.
Fucking weather balloons.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for giving us part 1 of the Rendlesham
I
Forest.
can't
Thank
wait
you.
to tell you guys the rest.
We're
It's going
going
to be awesome.
to come back next week with the second part of this, and I think it will probably be the final installment of this episode.
I'm hoping.
right, well-
Herman said he'd help me out with some research.
Nice.
Heck
yeah.
Co-tag team research development here on this story, guys.
Heck
But again,
yeah.
thank you very much, Rachel, for the Rendlesham Forest
you.
Part 1. Next week, we will do Rendlesham Forest Part 2, so please stay tuned for that.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, that was part 1 of the Rendlesham Forest. At this time right now, we're going to move into our segment we like to call Getting Lost in the Forest. A segment where we let our young and passionate Forrest basically give us a example of what chafes his balls, what's making him angry during the week. All right, Forrest, let's get us lost in the forest.
Okay, here we go. Hey guys, how's it going? Today's my rant about Trump's Justice Department blocks monitoring of crimes against LGBT teens, well, teenagers. In a notice on Wednesday, the Department of Justice, headed by anti-LGBT Attorney General Jeff Sessions, announced a revision to the National Crime Victimization Survey, one of the key sources of data on victims of crime. This angers me beyond belief, because I grew up with years of constant bullying in almost every way possible in middle school, where I grew up in South New Jersey, high school in Central Massachusetts. Even though I was extremely proactive with trying to get help throughout middle school and high school, the public school systems all told me the same thing. Even in my high school in Massachusetts that I transferred to sophomore year in high school, he claims it's, for example, I'm quoting, if he claims it's against their beliefs and the state/federal government/ the branches of government, etc., still excludes mandatory motions to allow sexuality to our bullying policies, then he has every right to do so if it's his religious belief and there is nothing we can do. In middle school, I was threatened in the most disgusting ways possible, and my main bully brought a knife to school with a death list.
Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah, when I was in high school in Mass, I was very quiet about my sexuality. It wasn't anyone's business, but every day, bros kept asking me if I was a fag or a fudge packer. But my principal, Mr. Pig, told me it was my fault for being so open about it. At the age I was in, I didn't know what to do. I just felt like nothing and thought of suicide many times. Nowadays, people are blaming the students for these people who snap or kill themselves. But in reality, you can't blame the students without realizing the other factors, such as the school boards for enabling. You can't blame the parents without also realizing that our country's government leaders are a factor as well for underfunding school safety and mental health drastically since 2010-2011. I am not talking about private schools either. These are public schools as well, but we can save that for a whole nother podcast. This part of my life is one of the reasons I am how I am today, especially on a mental level.
Yep.
Also, we can't forget the science part of this, how vulnerable and undeveloped you are when you are in your teen years, especially since there's tons of research out there, scientific research out there, that proves you're really not fully grown until, what, like 25?
20, yeah, well,
23?
21 is when your cognitive development is fully formed.
But your brain continues to sort of develop synaptically.
Kind
until you're
of.
25.
Yeah, but who's got their shit figured out in their 20s?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Truth.
Exactly.
Do you have anything else to say for that, or were you all set with this?
I don't have it figured
to
out
be
in my
honest with you,
30s.
no. I'm just, it's just extremely angering. I'm sure a lot of people, such as myself, are experiencing the same kinds of feelings. Even people who are straight, they're just allies who have gotten bullied because maybe people thought they were bi or gay or whatever.
Well, I was what you would call an ally. I had friends.
Yep.
I was one to stick up for these people. The fag word came out a lot. specifically thinking of a few of my friends that I did have who were openly gay and were proud of it. And
I was more forced
everybody
out.
had this person was a standalone person, though. He was,
Right.
you know, he was proud and didn't fucking matter. And,
Kudos to him.
But
or
he
her.
got a lot of flack, and you know, I stuck by them. I also stuck by like the mentally challenged kids because they got made fun of. Like,
Oh
crazy
yeah, I
too.
feel so bad. I
But
dated one in middle school.
To pull back on any type of protection for this type of bullying, I mean, granted, bullying shouldn't be accepted in any which way, shape, or form, but to specifically not count sexual bullying in this data it's wrong. It really is, in my opinion.
It still goes on before.
We're gonna treat everybody equally in this country. It's one
And
thing
keep
that we
your
don't.
God out of my schools,
Right,
huh?
absolutely.
Still
Seriously.
sadly in
Religious views should have nothing to do
schools.
with how we keep data on bullying.
Right.
Bullying is bullying regardless. And
It's
if this
awful.
person is being
No one
bullied
deserves to get bullied.
because this
No.
other asshole has a problem with him because his God, who never once in the fucking Bible said that gays, lesbians, trans are wrong. It's fucking bullshit, dude.
Yeah, but I've even heard people in Boston just on the train. I was there for like a Red Sox game or whatever. Even
Yeah, but you
these.
go to Boston, dude, the word
and-
fag is
and-
unfortunately going to be used all
Oh,
the
I'm not
time.
talking about that. I mean,
Oh,
like
okay.
random people walk up to us, like on the train systems or bus systems, and they're like, "Oh, are you a supporter of gay people? Then you're gonna go to hell."
Oh, thank you.
And it's like, well-
you get those.
You also like to wear your rainbow T-shirt, so I mean that doesn't help your
I
case.
wear it all
Yeah,
the
but
time.
why should he be targeted at all because he wore? I'm going to start wearing rainbow shirts all over the place.
People might think you're
Tell
bi
me.
or gay, but that's
Like,
just
hey,
awful.
Maybe
It's
I am,
awful.
maybe I'm not. Not your fucking business.
I
Move
hope you're
well-
not.
on, fella. Move on, fella. The symbol.
It's just
The
stereotypes
symbol
are
of the
awful.
flag
Yeah.
is a symbol of unity. It has always been a symbol of unity. It will always be a symbol of unity. That is
Yeah.
why the movement uses that symbol. Mm-hmm. It is a beautiful symbol. The rainbow is one of the most beautiful things on this planet,
It
in my
is
opinion. And
interesting.
It's a beautiful symbol of unity. It unifies every color, visibly and non-visibly.
You guys are wearing rainbow. Kudos, thank you. I love you're very colorful too, Rachel.
I'm wearing
love it.
everything's going to be all right Bob Marley shirts.
Everything just might be all right.
Yeah, guys. Forrest, honestly, this was one of your best.
Really?
And
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
It
for it.
really
appreciate
opened
it.
our eyes, and I hope it really opens the eyes of others who listen to this. This is a problem. This is a part of the darker side that
Happens
we
a
live,
lot down south too.
We live in this in our existence here on planet Earth and in our country right now, America.
Yeah, kids should be allowed to grow up and be who they are.
It sounds
Whoever
really
they are.
it sounds really bad, but this is why a lot of people stay in the closet.
Yeah.
It's
Because of this, absolutely.
and it shouldn't
I'm-
be that way.
I'm not gonna lie too. I've
Not
seen
gonna lie,
videos.
guys.
Oh yeah,
Really
drink a
not
little
gonna
bit.
No.
Yeah.
all right, not gonna lie.
I mean, yes, it's a new thing that I've been learning over the years, but I've seen those videos where you have like the 8-year-olds, the 6-year-olds, girls doing boy stuff, boys putting on makeup, and people say, "Oh, these millennials or whatever," and I'm like, just let them be themselves, you know. But at the same time, though, maybe they shouldn't post it online.
No. They should. That kid who posts those videos of him doing makeup and everything.
and he does
Yeah.
such a great job.
Yeah.
I know
Phenomenal, right?
whatever
Phenomenal.
pronoun he wants to
Associate with.
associate with. Unbelievable makeup.
It's
on this.
amazing.
You know,
Are you
I've
talking
got
about
Peter-
Jeffree Star?
Well, he was in my teen years. Hold on.
No, not Jeffree Star, but there's this new kid. He's probably like 8 or 9 years old who basically.
I-
Oh wow, no kidding.
Yeah, it's the Forrest
I'll
stuff
have
on
to
him
show
or
you the
stuff like
videos.
that.
Dude, he is unbelievable.
I can't even watch the.
This
I
kid
can't even
is
look at the
going to have
comments.
this kid is
Yeah.
going to have a career in makeup and
He's gonna be very
in Hollywood
successful.
or be a successful model himself because
Yeah.
he's a charming young
For
fellow.
all we know, he's straight. Like
He could be straight. Who
Very
knows?
good.
and that's
whatever.
fine. He
Sexuality
just likes
and
doing
gender.
makeup.
Then you get people throwing shade all over the place. You get your bullies, your trolls.
Oh,
who
the
are-
parents,
Exactly,
yeah,
the parents
yeah.
should spank them. It's like, no, let the kid be who that kid wants to be. We shouldn't tell our kids. We should give them good parenting. We should give them discipline. We should give them a direction. Let them know this.
And encouragement.
And encourage them to be who they want to be. I'm not giving you the millennial helicopter thing. If my parents had said, be who you want to be, do what you want to do, we're here 100%. My life may have gone in a different direction. I did have really decent support. I can't say that they didn't, but that type of direction is what every kid needs nowadays. And they need to find out who they are, who they're going to be by themselves.
If a boy wants to
With
play
their
with Barbies or watch, I don't know, some kind of girly Disney movie,
Oh, so our 5-year-old
cares, you
loves
know?
My Little Pony.
That's amazing.
Loves it.
Embrace it.
But he came home one day, and we're like, "Hey, bud, what do you want for Christmas? You really like My Little Pony? Did you want some toys?" No.
Doesn't mean he's going to be gay.
What did
Well,
he say?
no, he said those are for girls. And it's like, yeah, but they're toys. Toys are for everyone.
I was like, who told you that?
There's no gender in
Who
toys.
told you that? I'm like, buddy, I told him straight out. I said, if you want to play with My Little Pony, play with My Little Pony. You want to play with Transformers? That's awesome.
Girls want to play with guns? I mean,
Whatever.
that's on them.
There are tons of girls that want
They're
to play
toys.
with guns.
They're meant to be played with. It doesn't matter who's playing them.
Yeah.
They're marketed for certain sexes. And
Of course they are.
It's awful.
Wrong. Hey, My Little Pony, you can call me Brony if you want. I think is one of the most creative,
applaud you.
well written, probably some of the most life lessons that you can get out of a show. It's beautiful
Agreed.
to look at. Come on, whatever. My Little Pony, killer. A+ on that. I'll
Yep.
give 100 out of 100 whatevers.
Yep.
That's my
get
100
that.
out of 100 rainbows. Okay.
I love My Little Pony. So cute.
But it's a great movie. We brought our son to the movie. It was
It was his first experience in a
First
movie
movie.
theater.
His
Oh, yeah, that new one that just came out?
Yep.
Yeah, it's great. Be who you want to be, kids.
Please.
Love who you want to love. And do what you want to do within the constraints of being a good person.
Yeah, of course. Be who you are. Be an amazing person.
Thank
be
you
a
so
hard
much
worker.
again, Forrest. This is, again, one of the better Getting Lost in the Forest.
I feel
It's
it.
really opened up, I think, a lot of our hearts and eyes. And thank you for sharing your experiences
Thank you.
and this thing here.
Thanks, guys.
I feel like we all got lost in the forest and then found a picnic table under a tree
And had a conversation.
and had a conversation.
That's
Nice.
amazing.
That's what this segment's all about, man. We saw the darker side, and then we conquered.
Yeah.
And listen, everybody, if shit's going wrong and everything looks like the world just couldn't get any bleaker, there's so many places. Reach out. There are people that love you.
Contact us. I'll
let
talk to you.
Let us know.
Yeah,
Like
Rachel's got a psychology background. Forrest has been bullied. I was bullied. I was a fat kid. John.
I have some
I'm still a
psychology.
fat kid. I mean, just reach out to the fat kids. Like you're beautiful the way you are.
We love you all, honestly. And
Be you.
Again, there are 100 ways that you can get help, and
Suicide hotline.
maybe in our notes for the podcast, because none of us did any research for this, but Forrest.
Yep, I can
please
provide
give
it.
them a bunch
Helplines.
of helplines.
Yeah,
and
great idea.
And places to go in case they are being bullied and they need help. And
They're in a
nobody's
bad
listening.
situation.
Exactly. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us in the Darkercide Podcast today.
Thank you.
I am David POTTLE. You can find me on Facebook at David POTTLE. That is Bottle with a P. P-O-T-T-L-E. You can find my band at Frenemy Providence on Facebook. You can find us on all the other social medias. My other podcast that I do is Life, Relationships, and Everything in Between with Kevin Spurl, a great podcast that's a completely different format. Guys, please rate, like, and subscribe. Please give us some reviews on Google Play and iTunes. Without those reviews, we can't get any bigger. We can't move any further.
Please.
Whether you like it or not, just give us an honest review.
Even if something upset you during our podcast, just tell us. You know.
Yeah, we want to hear
and
about
give
it.
us your feedback, honestly. Thank you so much, guys, for coming. Rachel, what do you got for dates?
So I'm Rachel Pottle. My lovely husband David here is the host. You can find me on Facebook, Rachel Gordon Pottle. Bottle with a P, as was described. I am the original way of spelling, which is Rachel. You can also find me on Snapchat. Add me, send some pics. DRP49532. I'd love to hear from you all. Thank you again for having me, guys, and I can't wait to come back.
You are always a permanent
Thank
part
you.
of this podcast.
Yes, please.
All four of us are the permanent part of this podcast.
We're like an amazing team, and I love it.
Forrest, what do you got for some deets and bullshits?
Okay, I just want to thank all of you for listening to me, and thank all of our podcaster listeners, all that great stuff. Just thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to have your ear. I just, Forrest Smith. I have a company named Forrest Films, although now it's more of an advertisement company than anything else. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, just Forrest Films with 2 R's. Forrest Films. I'm on anything else really. Instagram as Forrest Smith on Instagram, and please check out our group pages, Facebook, WordPress. We're on freaking YouTube. You can even have a YouTube on your phone. Podbean, Twitter, Instagram.
WordPress.
Yeah, Pinterest? WordPress, yeah.
We haven't done a
WordPress.
Pinterest yet.
Not yet. And whatever, and soon we might even be on Spotify. We're now finally available on Android platform for Android Play Music, which is amazing. So please check us out. If you can't find us, message us. We'll give you the link directly to our Android Play Music cast. On Twitter, we kind of have a different name. It's I think it's Darkercide Pod. Instagram, it's the same thing. It's a different one. It's just regular, the Darkercide Podcast. You can find us with that information on almost all the platforms. The Darkercide Podcast. And but thank you for listening. And I'm Forrest Smith. And thank you,
John.
Yeah, what up? I'm John Herman. You can find me at Herman Brau. That's HERRMANN, the German word for beer, BRAU. At Instagram, you can find me on Facebook if you want. I hate that platform, but I use it to set up events with my friends. And
promote his podcast.
What was that?
And promote his podcast.
And shamelessly promote my podcast. I love you all. Take care. Be well.
All right, everybody. Peace and love.
Peace.
Have a wonderful time.
Make good choices.
Please do.
Drive fast and take chances.
Yes.
Never drive faster than I can see.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
There are no
Thank
roads
you.
where we're going.
Oh, yeah.
Darkercide Podcast.